that prioritize efficiency and inclusivity over congestion. This discussion is not just about understanding mobility challenges. It is about rethinking how we move and enabling more sustainable, people-centric choices for the future. To formally set the tone for this important conversation, we will begin with introductory remarks from the leadership of the two organizations that have made this series possible. To set the context for today's gathering, it is my privilege to invite Sri Anantharaman, CEO of the Bengaluru Science and Technology Cluster, to deliver his introductory remarks and help frame the significance of today's discussion on mobility. May I request Sri Anantharaman to kindly address the audience?
Good evening, Niharika. Thank you very much. Thanks for everybody to be here. I think we have beaten the mobility issue, and then we are starting on the good time. I think the good things are starting from today. I think when we conclude this program, things will be better for the city which we love and we live in. So thank you very much for coming here. I represent Bengaluru Science and Technology Cluster. I first want to thank my good friend Satish, and Arun is here, and the team of BAF is here. Without their support, I think this series of program could not happen. And both of us clearly know that there is a huge commitment for the city, what we live, and we want to do something for the city. That's how this entire series of model of program has come into picture. We started, as you see, that we started with waste, and then we went to water management, now we're going to mobility. So I thought it's very important for me to really little bit brief about the BEST cluster itself, because what you see is a glimpse of what we are doing in Bengaluru, but it's a national mission under the office of PSA, that is Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India. There are 8 clusters in the country, which Bengaluru is being one, and we are well supported by Indian Institute of Science. We are placed inside the campus itself. Apart from IISc, we are backed by 3 other large institutions, including NCBS, ICTS, and JNCASR. So all 4 entities has come and formed this BEST cluster in Bengaluru. The idea is, first is obviously the larger idea is about self-sustainability, Atmanirbharta, making country very competitive on a global scale. The good thing about our country and then our city, and therefore I can able to bring down to the narrowest thing up to our ward itself, that we have a lot of problems, we have a lot of challenges, and there are a lot of opportunity. The good thing about our country is that we have a great solution sitting here. The minds are very good, thought leadership is sitting here. Somebody has to enable it, somebody has to bring that discussion to the table, and somebody has to arrive at a solution which is originated from the country, and therefore we have a capacity which we can able to solve our problem by ourselves. Mobility is not a very distant problem. Yeah, I think everybody talks about mobility as an issue, but I think we see as a challenge and we see as an opportunity. I think it can be crackable. What we require is a dialogue, what we require is the thoughts to come on the table, and then we over a period of time arrive at something which is very good. The only class which we use is science and technology. So we are here for science and technology. We see through the problem angle with the lens of science and technology, because we strongly believe, I think the future opportunity for the country happens through innovation, research, development, implication, and translation to the society. And therefore, when this journey travels out, science and technology becomes very important, and none other than IISc can support us. I think that's where our strength comes from. This whole journey is concerned. So this is a mission for Bengaluru. Quickly, what we do is we are in the phase 1 of our travel. We have started in 2022. I just want to leave a thought here, because what we work is very important for the city. So these problem statements has been identified by the team of consortium. We are not a single entity. We are by own consortium stakeholders. We have around 170 plus stakeholders who are guiding us. So initially when the thought process happened, the problem statement for the city also is picked up by the consortium member. So we started with One Health, because obviously with the rapid urbanization taking place, there is a challenge which is happening on all the living factors, including not only human, but also animals and other co-workers of this life. So One Health we have taken, then digital health is another focus area. And the third one which we are working is precision agriculture or smart agriculture, which you talk about that. So these are the 3 areas which as a thematic which we are working. Apart from that, we are now interested in mobility and water. That's why you see, I think the way we are moving forward for the next couple of years about this. Apart from that, this is a thematic angle. We also do quite a large program on breaking the boundaries sharing information. So some of the things which you are talking about, this initiative is about citizen reach out, because we believe, I think there are excellent information and ideas come from citizen. Listening is very important, and therefore we thought, I think some of the big problem statement can be put forward to our very honorable citizen and then take the feedback, and therefore we arrive at a collaborative solution towards the problem which we face. And that's why this is a citizen-centric initiative what we have taken. So this breaking the boundaries, sharing is also part of our very practical approach to the city problems there. So with this, I think I don't want to take, I think we are here to hear some of the very eminent speakers who have actually a lifelong mission on the mobility theme. So we are going to listen to them. But I from Best Cluster and all our colleagues here are really happy to see you here. Thank you for coming here. And I'm sure, I think the direction is not towards IPL, but stay here for next 3 hours time. But nevertheless, I think coming here is a great journey for all of you. Thank you for coming here. Wish you a good time for the next 3 sessions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Following this, we'll hear from Mr. Satish Malya, President of the Bangalore Apartment Federation, who will share his thought on vision and the role of citizen communities in shaping sustainable and efficient urban mobility in Bengaluru.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. You can hear me? Yeah. I think best we are working with long, about I think 6 months, and now is the 3rd program here. I think it's a good partnership to develop whatever the solution we want to do for the community. BAF, as a self-help group, about 1,450 plus apartment as our members. So we work for the community. It's a self-help group, and we work with the 30 clusters across the city. And we want to reach out to the solutions as to reach out to the community. That's what we thought of working with the best clusters. And we looking forward for today's panel discussion with the mobility. And I think it will be a good opportunity to work with all. And I think I'll welcome all the panelists to this session. Looking forward to listen to you all. Thank you so much.
Bengaluru's mobility ecosystem is complex and constantly evolving, from public transport networks and road infrastructure to last-mile connectivity and emerging mobility solutions. Every day, millions of people navigate the city, facing challenges related to congestion, accessibility, safety, and sustainability. Apartment communities and citizen groups are the key stakeholders in this landscape, influencing commuting patterns and local mobility practices. How we design streets, strengthen public transport, encourage shared mobility, and prioritize people over vehicles will have a direct impact on urban efficiency, air quality, and overall quality of life. Mobility is no longer just a planning concern, it's also a shared civic responsibility. To commence the discussion, it is my pleasure to invite our distinguished panels of speakers to the stage who bring together perspectives from government, research, community leadership, and on-ground implementation. We have Professor Abdul Rauf Pinjari, Professor of Center of Infrastructure, Sustainable Transportation and Urban Planning, and Center for Cyber Physical System at the Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. I request you to come. Shri Arun Pai, founder and heritage walk curator at Bengaluru Walks, who focuses on citizen-centric approaches on urban mobility. Professor Ashish Verma, Transportation System Engineer, Convener, IISc Sustainable Transportation Lab at the Department of Civil Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. Mr. Shamant Kuchangi, Head of the Traffic Engineer and Transportation Cell at the Directorate of Urban Land Transport, Government of Karnataka. Mr. Vikram Rai, former President of the Bangalore Apartments Federation, who will represent resident community perspectives. And finally, Mr. Satya Sankaran, Strategy Lead at Rain Matter Foundation and co-founder of Urban Morph, who is also the Bicycle Mayor of Bengaluru, who will moderate the session. Before I hand over the mic to Mr. Satya, I take the opportunity to thank the audience for submitting your questions and challenges through the registration form. Today's discussion has been shaped on your inputs. If you have any additional questions, please scan the QR code to submit them. We will address the selected question at the end of the session, and the remaining responses will be compiled and shared on the website as well as to your emails. Over to Mr. Satya.
Thank you. I thank BAF and BEST for putting together this panel. I think you have all spent a lot of time coming here, so I hope it will be worth it listening to us and taking something back. Incidentally, I just read Jawaharlal, Nehru, and I went to the J.N. Tata Auditorium, and then had to reroute myself to here. So I thought to myself, this is the problem of naming everything after one person, not everything really. But I also thought, just like the Times, it was my mistake and I'm blaming it on the popular person who everybody blames. So, but we are here, braved the IPL traffic, and there's somebody here who has done something around IPL. Maybe you can say how it was useful. Catching these popular things and trying to make it famous is something useful, I thought. But at the end of the day, this is science and technology, so we'll probably start with the two people here who are actually at IISc and set the frame of where we are today. We are talking about mobility. Many of us somehow buy our way out of water, buy our way out of power, hide all the ways somewhere or the other. But we have to all face the music, rich or poor, when we get out of our house, and that is mobility. You have to go from place A to place B. And that is where everything is stuck, and that's why it's the most popular topic. You won't have public discussions around power so much, I mean a little bit now, with the energy crisis and everything. But mobility is something that affects everyone, and it is one of the most commonly available public space for us, which is roads. Our parks and playgrounds are also disappearing, and what we have left is roads, footpaths, and a little bit of place here and there open space. So our house to office, to place C where we do entertainment, that is also a building now. No more open space left, very little. So we are facing a crisis of mobility, and it is incidental that we are now here in this planetarium which exposes to the wide entropic universe, and here we are talking about controlling entropy on the roads. But it is useful that science and technology plays a role, and it gives us the evidence and the basis required to make informed decisions. And it needs to reach the common man, and we have a few people here who have been trying to do that repeatedly, trying to get the message of what evidence tells us about how we should move, but we all conveniently ignore it. So if there is anything we can take away, at least listen to trying one of the methods of listening to evidence and trying to make sense of it and then ask the questions. So we have a mixed panel here, but maybe we can start with Professor Verma. You have done a lot of work around transportation demand modeling. You have been trying to speak to many people across society. You turn up on panels where citizens are there. You also work with the government officials. So does Professor Pinjri. What is your take on where urban mobility is going today, and what really is the problem? We'll get to the people's side of the problems, which a lot of questions are there. But what is your initial thoughts around that?
So the initial thought is, if you take the current business as usual of how we are handling urban transport and its future, most of the Indian cities, including Bengaluru, are declining in terms of sustainability, livability, and resilience. I think this is very clear, and it is also clear from our quantitative analysis and modeling that we keep doing and keep bringing those evidences on table for those who are sitting in decision making to take note of it and take decision. So current business as usual, the cities are declining, and if we really want to contain this, we need to really reimagine and understand the basic fundamental development goals for the city, which we are trying to aim and achieve. which I feel for all of us here is improving quality of life of every citizen. What we are trying to do is to make everybody understand how quality of life is connected to mobility and our mobility choices, and develop frameworks through which we can quantify it. But the problem really lies in the use of this data and these scientific evidences. It's really not that we don't have scientific evidences and data to take the right decision. There is plenty, in my almost 17 years of working at ISC at my research lab, we have done and bring enough evidences for every aspect of mobility. You talk anything and we can bring scientific evidences. But very rarely and very few times they are able to hit the right decision makers and result in actual decisions. And sometimes, of course, our analysis and modeling has helped things that were not good for the city, not letting them happen. Yeah. Unfortunately, our energy goes in doing that. So the problem really lies in the governance and the handling of urban transport today, rather than the scientific evidences behind it. We have enough scientific evidences. I think that's where we are stuck, and which is why I have been now, following up on major transformational changes that we need in how we are dealing and handling urban transport subject in our cities through various ways that I am trying to do. Hopefully we'll be able to talk some of them.
Yeah.
But that's where we are really stuck. Thanks.
So that's interesting. I think, Professor Pinjuru, you also done a lot of work. You had petabytes of data from traffic and many other things, and you guys have worked for a long time around trying to see how this helps with communicating things, how behaviors are being affected, a lot of that work. What are your insights from that? Has scientific evidence on mobility been able to make a mark? What is required additionally for that to be more effective? Of course, the government is the biggest listener and they need to act on the commons. But is there a way they are able to take cognizance of these things? Are they making any different decisions because of scientific evidence?
Yeah, first of all, thanks to BAF and this cluster for doing this event on the mobility topic. It's important that we interact with citizens also. So on your question about...
you have to keep it very close, they can't hear you. Very, very close.
On your question about is evidence reaching the right places and are right actions being taken based on evidence. So there are 2 or 3 different aspects. One is the institutionalization of how mobility is handled. Is it handled ad hoc or is it handled in an appropriate institutionalized way? Right? In that context, the BMLTA Act and its implementation. One is the Act and the other is its implementation in the way it needs to be and all that. Looking forward to seeing that enabled and implemented. Where various agencies in the city, not just in the city, in the state, for example, right? But for city like ours, DULT, GBA, and various agencies come together as part of the BMLTA, where there is one unified entity that looks at, tries to understand, and thinks of these mobility matters, and also provides information to the decision makers. It's very important to have that entity get going forward, and involve all the stakeholders needed, so to say. Until such an entity is not only enabled in an act, but also in spirit, many decisions might end up being just ad hoc, because if somebody thinks this project is going to be great for the city, it's going to be their thought, which may or may not necessarily work out well for the city. And there may be many solutions out there. There could be expand traffic, expand last mile, first mile connectivity, enhance non-motorized transport, or also build more roads and so on and so forth. Many solutions out there. Everybody has a solution. In fact, everybody who travels is a transport expert, right? everybody has a solution. The question is, which solutions work out better, which solutions work out better when, and which combination of solutions is the right idea. To answer that question, even if I give an answer right now, it would just be an opinion, the so-called expert opinion, unless it's backed up with evidence, analysis, and so on and so forth. Right. Now, so if we have a process in place to use evidence, analyses, to evaluate various solutions, to implement them, and not only just implement them, but also feedback to understand whether it's worked out or not, and so on, and then make it as a continuous process. To enable this process, to have this process in place, we need BMLTA actually going on and be at the center of all of these processes, so to say. Now, coming to evidence, any system, if we can't measure it, we can't manage it. As simple as it is. Do we have enough evidence of how travel happens in the city? When, what, where, by what modes? Not only by people, but also goods movement and so on. We have some, but not necessarily all the evidence that we need. There's a lot of need for better measurement of travel in the city, into the city, outside the city, and so on. There are some efforts that some of us are doing. There is efforts that some of the government agencies are doing. But again, we need a process in place, an institutionalization in place, and continuous support in place for that effort to sustain. We can't measure today and then use that measurement to plan for the rest of the next few decades. So we need a continuous measurement program. It could be through surveys, it could be through a lot of technology now, right? Bangalore traffic police have a lot of surveillance cameras. Can we make something out of the data? There's a lot of data that comes through these GPS devices on BMTC buses, the metro trains. There's a lot of data that we can make use of. But we need a program in place. We need a program in place. We also need a program in place to be able to get information from the citizens with their consent, right? A lot of travel finally is by the citizens. If citizens are able to provide information on where they travel without necessarily revealing all their identifying information, that also will help. We also need information, for example, on where there are problems in the city. We have a leader who does excellent work on fixing issues one by one after the other, right? So if we need information on where there are problems, we need a process in place to curate those and so on and so forth. So we need much more evidence. There is some, but we need to continue building that evidence and have a process in place to sustain it, and also have a process in place like the BMLTA to act on that evidence. So that's when I think we'll have a more streamlined approach.
Fair enough. So I will get to the action part of it, which will inspire a lot of people. Before that, since you brought up BMLT, I think it's useful for Shaman sir to just introduce DULT, the work it has been doing so far in mobility, many different things, and also maybe explain BMLT a little bit to the people here. That word is constantly coming. Some people have heard it, some haven't, but it's just useful to explain. What is that thing that is conceived in people, in the minds of the legislators? Keep it very close.
Hi, good evening to all. So, as both the professors have told, scientific solutions are there. Okay, somebody wants to take over.
Yeah, the AI is listening, so you can go ahead.
So, see, the solution is very clear. The only way Bangalore can sustain its mobility is public transport and walking. There is no other way.
Cycling,
to some amount of other modes. But I would say public transport and walking, because everybody who goes by a public transport will walk for some time, wait at the bus stand for some time. So footpath is a must.
Yeah.
So there is no other solution. There's no second solution to it. That is something we all have to understand. And professors will explain better. Science is very clear about it. Okay. Has government recognized it? Yes. The 2020 comprehensive mobility plan for Bengaluru, the key objective, the main objective is that by 2035, 70% of the trips have to happen by public transport system, right? And probably 80% if you mix public transport plus walking. That's the only way the city will be able to sustain. Now, where the issue is how do you translate these policies, plans, ideas at the ground level, right? So because it requires capacities at various scales. Capacities at the administrative scale, capacities at the policy making, capacities at the execution, planning, execution, and not just execution, also maintenance. We have seen how extremely great projects like Tendershore have sometimes gone bad, right? Not properly maintained and stuff like that. So sustainability is, in my opinion, not just about green, anything that would sustain for a long period of time, right? That is sustainability. So we develop a lot of good things. You know, we do 1 or 2 kilometers of cycle track, few kilometers of bus priority lane. Everything in this city is a pilot. You go after a few years, nothing is there, or it's not achieving the objective it is supposed to do. Arun has done a lot of great work. But what we are finding difficult is how do we sustain this over a long period of time. So what really is required is reforms. It's not projects. You know, day in and day out, we keep announcing projects. I don't want to comment, you know, every project will have some benefit, right? You see somewhere some benefit will be there, but we need reforms on how to actually build good projects, identify good projects, build good projects, and sustain those projects over a long period of time so that the city transforms. I think that's something where we should be looking at, and that's where the citizens should be concerned and keep pushing the government to do it and not ask for projects. Okay. So, with that background, the National Urban Transport Policy is something that, to a certain extent, started looking at reforms. How the cities will have to develop? Because urbanization is a very, very, obvious thing that is happening in India. And Karnataka, certain estimates says that by 2047, we will be close to 70%, 65-70% urbanized, which is currently about 38-39%. Already we are so choked. Bangalore. The population of Bangalore is 1.4 crores. The next most populated city in Karnataka, Mysuru, 9-10 lakhs. Above Bandra, 11 lakhs, 12 lakhs. Such a huge difference. And most of the other cities, what we call as city corporations, are all in 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. How much does Bangalore it can take, right? And what happens if 70% of our Karnataka is urbanized? Can they all come and live in Bangalore? I don't know, unless you rename Karnataka as Bangalore, probably they remain able to do it. I don't know if that's the other thing, right? So, to be able to tackle this, what the urban transport policy way back in 2006 told us, at least cities which are more than 1 million population should have a unified urban transport authority. Unified urban transport authority which can plan, manage, coordinate urban transport. Because in other forums, Professor Verma has spoken, transport is an extremely complicated subject. Okay. Way back in olden days, the way transport used to happen is there'll be a huge palace or an administrative center. There'll be 4, streets, diagonal streets, so it was all about geometry. So it was much easier to handle. But now with 1.4 crore population, with people with diverse, interests and diverse, what you call the value of time, it's very difficult to manage and satisfy everybody's mobility needs. So we end up with extremely complicated situation that for which we'll have to find solutions, and it cannot be done without people who are trained to do so, whom we call as transportation professionals. And that is lacking in this country, right? We have probably experts whom you can count in fingers in India. That's the situation. So what has happened is, obviously something has to happen. So you see a lot of people who have filled that as, from other fields, who try to do things, but they're not trained to handle complexities. Right? So that's where we are ending up in issues and not being able to come with scientific workable solution. So once this policy came and they told, yes, have a unified transport agency. So government of Karnataka was one of the foremost to take action on this. So in 2007, just a year after that policy came, we established something called as Directorate of Urban Land Transport, the institution I represent. So instead of doing it as a city level, Bangalore specific, it is a state level agency. So they told, okay, this agency is going to plan for the entire state, all urban areas in the state. And they constituted BMLTA for Bengaluru as a committee through an executive order. So basically neither DULT nor the BMLTA had the teeth. They had a good vision, but not the teeth, because there was no statutory powers given to them. So what different happened in 2022 is an act was passed in our legislature where BMLTA was reconstituted under the chairmanship of the Chief Minister, and they gave powers to BMLTA that they can plan, monitor, and every major project in Bengaluru, urban mobility related projects, should come for the approval of BMLT. So to say in a nutshell, how BMLTA is different is, until BMLTA came, there was coordination. If you come to government, we have a number of coordination meetings at every level. You have coordination by a additional chief secretary, you have coordination meetings by chief secretary, you have coordination meetings by, our DCM, CM. To me, that's a problem. See, you need a person to coordinate when there is no planning. Okay. When there's a plan is something that all agencies understand. See, before joining DULT, I worked in the US for a few years. I never remember attending any coordination meetings in the US. Never. Because everybody were very clear on what they're supposed to do, because there was a plan in place. There were SOPs in place for all agencies. So they just knew what they're supposed to do and it would happen. It was only when I came to India that so many coordination meetings. So that's a change that BMLTA plans to bring in, that coordination. So that's a change that BMLTA envisions to bring in. So what it says is that it's going to prepare a very detailed, comprehensive mobility plan, which will have a statutory backing under this act. Until now, the plan used to be there, but nobody will have to follow it because there's no statutory mandate for this. There was no act which told that so-and-so agency will have to prepare a comprehensive mobility plan. Now the act says that the city should have a comprehensive mobility plan, and any projects that are implemented in Bangalore should be a part of this plan. Okay, that is number one. So sometimes we do have plans, but there's no funding, right? So plans become a wish list of people. So what we told in the act is that the comprehensive mobility plan is also going to have a city investment plan, which means that every project or a reform that is mentioned in the comprehensive mobility plan should be tied to an investment program. So we need to know from where the money is going to come for the implementation, who is going to do that, who will draw the money, who will repay the money. So those aspects have to be clear. Only then it has a presence in the comprehensive mobility plan. Right? It's not a wish list. We know the means to get it implemented. And the third aspect is that every agency which is involved in implementation of urban mobility projects should present their annual implementation plan to the BMLTA. So the BMTC has to say, this is what I'm going to do in this financial year. The BBMP, or erstwhile BBMP, now GBA, has to give its plan, saying this is where I'm going to build my roads, this is where I'm going to do these things. BMRCL has to do that. Every agency will have to do that, and the BMLTA will have a platform to look at all these things comprehensively, see whether it fits into the mobility plan, whether prioritize it. Okay, BMTC is, or what you say, let's say in the master plan, BDA is planning to develop certain new area, whereas BMTC is focusing on developing their routes somewhere else. So maybe I can negotiate with BMTC and say, hey boss, this is where you need to focus. Because a lot of times citizens have told the first metro should have probably been on the outer ring road. That's where all the jobs are. Because probably nobody looked at that. The land use development was happening somewhere, the jobs were happening somewhere, but BMRCL were building somewhere else. Right? So this is the right agency which can do that kind of a planning. Okay. So these are the three very key tools which has statutory backing, which would help the city to plan and implement better.
Fair enough.
Okay. That's the act. Now, the issue, again, I'll come back what I raised is, if we leave BMLTA as an act, it will just be in the papers. Do we have capacities in the city for BMLTA to function? Who will plan such things? Do you have people who can plan such things? Do you have people who can, coordinate those aspects? Bring all the agencies together, have a long-term vision. Do we have such administrators?
Yeah.
Are they going to be long-term administrators? So there's a reform that is required in the way we build BMLT. Now that's the way we have to focus on.
Excellent.
As we build BMLT, it should not be another government organization. It should be a reformed organization.
Nice.
That's the only way it will work the way Professor Pinjari told. Right. Otherwise it will be another act.
Yeah.
Another department. And
that's actually very deep. You want to get.
I answer?
No, you answered more than that. Okay. But we'll come back to that, because what you said in the end is very deep. Is that it's not the act itself and its mechanics, but it's who heads it, how it is staffed, how it is, how the leadership is thinking about the city, and a lot of people will go around the table to do that comparison of how other countries and the LTA of Singapore or the what's that in London, TfL, these are the kind of organizations. So by the way, the full form of BMLT is Bengaluru Metropolitan Land Transport Authority. So it's trying to, most of you know this, but it's trying to bring together BMTC doing its own bus routes, Metro doing its own, go to Tumkur, go to next Davangere, and well, the city is suffering on one corner, you're building something somewhere else, to micro level coordination of many different things. But before going to Vikram, I would say, like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And all the apartment dwellers every day are getting punched in the face when they get out, without even a plan. The problems of, and Bengaluru, because of its density, 1.4 is nothing, it's going to go to 2.5. And when they say 70% of Karnataka will be urbanized, I think most of it will be here. There is a different idea of why people should live somewhere, what is the local economic macros there. There's a lot of that. But Vikram, speak a little bit about, you've had this journey through BAF, and many of you here live in apartments. It is going to be urbanized with larger densities, more apartments. Single individual houses might be few. Those who can afford some villas might build it. It's getting denser, and it is going to be a lot more of apartments. What has been your journey of suffering with transportation? Whether it is going to work, getting out there, getting your elderly and kids, all sitting inside like jailed animals, caged animals rather, go out there, you will die. What is your sense of all the transportation things? I did have a lot of questions, but you know a little.
I thought I'll start my comments on a positive note. You biased me already to
No, switch it around. My questions don't matter.
No, so see, I have a slightly philosophical thought first to this argument, right? My feeling is that fundamentally we live in a very low trust society, right? Where it becomes very tough for different stakeholders to trust each other. So what do we end up doing? We create a lot of regulation, rules, etc. to disincentivize people from doing something. Risk taking is disincentivized, right? So while all trends, everything is pointing towards the cities growing vertically. In fact, a couple of days back also, and courtesy, Satish shared some sort of video snippets from the assembly session because we were trying to track something else. So the former Deputy Chief Minister Ashwath Narayana made comments saying it is going to grow vertically only because from a planning point of view, it is much more efficient to deliver services in a vertical society. But at the same time, it also generates a lot more traffic, mobility issues, etc. and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and Shaman sir made a right point saying that if BMLTA is not given the capacity and the execution horsepower, it will remain a mere sort of act, right? Now that's very reflective of us being a low trust society, basically, right? I mean, we saw a legislator and the leader of the opposition couple of days make demands for 5 IPL tickets, saying that, I don't want to stand in the queue with common people or be seated with the public, basically, right? Now what is that, right? I mean, he's saying that he's a VIP, I don't want to sit with these kinds of, I think that's a fundamental problem. But having said that, more and more urbanization and more vertical growth will only, like he rightly said, Bengaluru will become Karnataka, right? That's how it is moving towards 1.4 crores. I didn't know that Mysore's population was just 10-11 lakhs. A stark difference, right? Huge disproportion. But having said that, I would like to look at the vertical growth as an opportunity for also solutioning, right? Since we are also talking about anchoring this conversation in science and evidence and data, I think there is enough reason to believe that vertical aggregations are opportunities for also micro efficiencies over there. And we have, for example, Satya, you and me have spoken about how apartment complexes, and I'm largely representing that community, so I will keep my comments to that. See, there is a behavioral aspirational issue. First of all, most of the people who are from middle and upper middle class always think that having a private vehicle is an aspirational thing, right? You come to the city and saying that I'll have a car, and it's more and more, right? The husband has a car, wife has a car, keeps on growing, right? It symbolizes something. It symbolizes progress. So how do you break that cycle of behavioral challenge, right? Where people want to be seen driving a car, but at the same time there's predominant conversation saying that you'll have to move to public transport. That's one. I want to park that thought. I don't have an answer for that, but I think we'll have to consider that very strongly. But having said that, I think vertically aggregated housing, in my mind, gives a lot of opportunity also to apply efficiencies at that microcosm level, basically, right? You can have, I mean, if there are communities which are anyway managing a lot of other things, water, waste, etc., has been told you do it yourself, right? To some extent, I think mobility also can be transferred to them, right? They can now, because there's so many, if there are 500 cars coming out of a gate during a day, right? How can you then optimize that flow? Can also be sort of co-owned with that community if the trust comes in. If tomorrow government says that, hey, you know what, all your apartments, you are my partners and collaborators in terms of how I want to solve for micro level sort of traffic management and mobility issues, can we sit together and sort of sort out those issues? And I'm sure there are enough experts like Professor Verma and Professor who are here who can come with the data to say that this is how we can sort it out. It is possible, right? I had seen a very interesting example in the place, close to the place where I live in L&T South City, where they have a road which goes parallel to the buildings and there's a park on the other side. They had implemented a very simple solution of putting some 4 or 5 boards which is indicating trips to different parts of the city. One said electronic city, one said etc. It was just a way for somebody to come, stop there for 5 minutes and let others join and hop on them and do some ride sharing or something like that. Very simple idea, but effective nevertheless, basically in terms of how it can facilitate ride sharing basically. So I think there is enough opportunities for vertically housed aggregations to contribute towards, to some extent, solving for this problem, but we need to invest a lot of trust in coming together. Unless the system does not break that shackles, right, of you versus me, it's very tough to do that.
Yeah, I saw you versus me with the DCM saying something about you guys asking him questions. But more interestingly, when we were running for the suburban rail integration between cantonment and the whatever line that is going, it was about a kilometer away, and we asked why can't it be together. One of the ministers who was there, I don't want to name him, but he said, no, that is not possible, too many people will come in a car. I said, no, that's a public transport space, they are going to go in public transport. So the densification argument is mostly driven by fear of the association with motor vehicles alone. And they seem to think that whenever people come together, they will only come in a motor vehicle, they will not use other modes, which now, like what we are seeing, is totally different. People are very used to taking the metro or taking the bus, and I think that's more and more coming in. But Professor Verma, your thoughts, because some of those things, before I come to the inspirational part, not that you are not, but there's a science of understanding. You worked a lot around this traffic modeling, around people coming out, going in. There are people who listen, but then somewhere the seriousness of evidence breaks down. The departments will listen to you because they understand. And transportation partly is a political subject. It is also like so one of the other political persons said, it's like, no, we don't come to the city to go in a bus. We come in the city to earn big money and go in a flashy car. That is there. It is a popular narrative. How do you think this will change? Is it from the people? Is it from the government? Where does this narrative itself be different? Not that you should give things up. Somewhere it is a 0 or 1. You either should not ever buy a vehicle, or there is that false narrative that is happening.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that we can talk and discuss, and I mean, we need a lot more time, but I'll just try to put these things like a laundry list. Yeah, one is this car ownership. We have, as you rightly mentioned, it's a narrative that's been falsely tagged as aspirational. I strongly feel it's being falsely tagged to people as aspirational, of course for political gains and interest also. What is truly aspirational for Indians is to become richer in terms of per capita income, per capita GDP, which is abysmally low currently for India. We are hardly $2,700 per capita annual average. Yeah, whereas rich countries that we are talking about are anywhere from 60,000 to 80,000 plus US dollars per capita. Yeah. So I don't think car ownership per se is fundamentally aspirational. The fundamental aspiration is for Indians to raise this standard of living in terms of per capita GDP. We falsely tag car ownership to it. If that is so, a taxi person who takes a loan and buy a car and runs it should be happily ever after. Isn't that? Is that the case? No, that's not the case. So it's a completely misaligned aspiration, being put together for larger, political and this whole political economy, how people vote, it all part of that. So this is where we need to change, and there are examples around the world. When you think about Singapore, the car ownership of Singapore is 120 cars per 1,000 population. It has remained stagnant for decades now. Bangalore is already at 165 cars per 1,000 population. Okay, whereas the per capita GDP of Singapore is close to $84,000 per capita, and we are at $100 per capita. A average Singaporean is much richer than a CEO in our country. Then why the hell 80% of Singaporeans are using public transport. This is where we really need to think. Talk about Zurich. Almost 50-60% trips are on public transport in spite of they being so rich. Or in Netherlands, where their per capita GDP is anywhere around 60,000 or so, but almost 50-60% trips are on cycle. So I think these are and today when we are seeing this oil crisis, this is really the time to push the agenda of public transport and active modes. Your cycle mare, cycling, how it started in Netherlands in 70s when oil crisis happened.
Yeah.
And Prime Minister came on television, Dutch PM, and told people that we need to change our way in which we travel. And this is how it started. Why don't we take this as an opportunity now and do that? So that's, this whole fundamental, argument of car being aspirational. No, that's not true. We have been totally misguided. Yeah, that's one thing. Others about this capacity building that you rightly, brought it up. And I'll just put some of these reforms that I'm trying to push like a laundry list, but we'll have time to discuss. One is we are trying to push for a dedicated urban transport service cadre. It's really, really essential and required in our country to bridge this gap that you talked about in terms of capacity. So even if you have a committee called BMLTA, but who will do all these things? There's also another fundamental point of why traffic police do traffic management. Did you guys ever ask this question? And which other country in the world general police handles traffic management? Please go and find out. Next time when you're traveling, all of you would have exposure to several other countries. Please find out in which country general police handles traffic management. And is it so simple that a person who was catching criminal yesterday gets transferred to traffic cell and start dealing with traffic, and by the time they understand something, he is again back to catching criminals? With a subject which is so complex and technical. And why is this being done like this? Likewise, another fundamental point I want to say, agencies and urban local bodies which are handling transport functions. And as we discussed, transport is a complex subject. It's a very technical subject. Okay. Why these agencies should be headed by a bureaucrat, by an IS officer? Why IS officer should be MD of BMRCL or a IS officer as commissioner of DULT? It's a different thing if a knowledgeable and passionate officer comes and do something good, but that's not system. So what we are trying to say is that people and officers will come through this urban transport service cadre would also handle traffic management, would also through career progression would head these organizations, so that you give these organizations proper technical leadership, not a general administrator. You don't need a general administrator to run these organizations. You need a technical or a scientific leadership. And the parallel of this I give is ISRO. And I keep talking this at every platform. Who is the chairman of ISRO? Is it a bureaucrat? It's a scientist. Why do the government, the chairman's job or position is administrative? They can as well have an IS officer. But why don't they do that? Because the nature of that organization's work is extremely scientific, and what you need is a scientific leadership. Tomorrow you start making IS officers as chairman of ISRO, and then you see the productivity of ISRO. What will happen? Today we praise it so much. Likewise, even director of ISC, IITs, they can as well be a IS officer. Why a professor is made as a director? Because the nature of the organization is scientific. You need a scientific leadership. So these are really some, and the last reform, there are more, but another important one, this use of IRC codes is killing our cities.
The what? IRC?
IRC, Indian Roads Congress codes.
What does it mean?
They are being followed for all design and other related aspects of urban transport. And it's a complete mismatch because IRC, first of all, is a body consisting of PWD engineers. Their code building is primarily civil engineering approach. which is no more sustainable. And that's not reflecting this whole aspect of livability, sustainability, resilience that we are talking about. For them, walking space is just a small, level of service criteria. It doesn't really come in the picture that we are talking about walking spaces as well-being spaces or cycling spaces as well-being spaces. So there is a huge gap in IRC codes, and IRC comes under MORTH, Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. And urban transport is the subject matter of Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. So these are some really fundamental, mismatches and misalignments that need to be done. Otherwise, we will just be sitting in such panel discussions and keep discussing. Thanks.
I think it's go ahead, please.
I think Professor raised the issue of the senior administrators being technical, but what's also surprising is that BMTC, which currently caters to about 38-40% of the trips in Bengaluru, has 0 transport planners. So it's one of the largest transport systems in the city.
Country also.
In the country, having 0 transport planners. 0. BMRCL has 2, luckily, at the lower level somehow.
They squeezed in.
But that's the capacities, that's the reform we want. Because until that happens, no matter what we want to do, you can build 1,000 kilometers of roads, they will all be potholed. Whatever you do will be temporary, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay. So
maybe they're giving a signal that making it like the moon, get somebody who can deal with it like ISRO. But that's, exactly, I was coming to that. The biggest challenge with lots of us as normal people living in apartments and other thing is, while the systems are broken and they are managed by coordination committees, we just sits around and says, what do we do for the next 3 months? You do this, you do that, you do this, right? That's how it works, and it's very ad hoc. So it's the leadership, the planning, his own department continues to have a lot of planning support. They deal with the 2 professors sitting in here and many others to take inputs from many people. And while all of those happen, the comprehensive mobility plan is done. Between there and going to the people on the ground, all of this chaotic organization is what you all face on the ground. On the one hand, a lot of us are trying to fight the institutional inefficiencies. In one of the books I read, 83% of the lack of outcomes is inefficiencies, not corruption. It's only 17% corruption. It's 83% just pure things falling through the cracks because they just can't get around to understanding who is doing what tomorrow and how it needs to be done. And he pointed out very clearly that even standard SOP, if you just follow them, these are all technical issues, right? You just need to do this. You don't have to put too much creativity into it and follow those processes, it will. But on the people side, when we face the music every day and when you can't get things done, how many of you don't know Arun Pai? Don't know. Many of us know. No, don't know. Don't know. One person doesn't know, we'll help. But he'll tell you what he's doing. Is how do we take matters into our hands in whatever way? It need not be that you have to do this planning first and do this or do that. There is a visibility and the signaling that is very important. And he is also building certain institutional capacities. Arun, the question is, why did you have to do this? Why is this important? Without this, there is a lot of capacity building we can do. Why doesn't that work for you?
Okay, just to say what I do, I don't know who I'm speaking to, but it will help me. But are any of you in government?
No.
Okay. A genuine question. No, none of you are decision makers. All of you are public.
Yes.
Who face the inefficiencies that they also. So we are all in the same boat. I am from your side. I am not a professor. I am not in government. And I think Kashi sir used a nice phrase last time. A, B, C, D. Anybody can do mobility. So mobility is a subject we all feel we are experts on, but we don't know anything about it. We are users of a service that is poor. But we feel we know what we can do about it. I am like that. But the difference is that professionally I am a tour guide. So for 20 years I have been conducting walking tours of Bangalore to explain the history of Bangalore. That's my profession, my passion. I chose it and I'm still doing it. And in doing so, I discovered my city is very difficult to walk on, not for my commute, when I want to showcase my city to somebody else. And I'm dealing with people who come from around the world to understand our city. And people who, Bangalore gets the most, whatever, GCCs, visitors. Who are those human beings who come to populate these companies? What do they do in their free time? They want to go out. When the senior guy from a country comes to understand India operations, he's staying at the Leela Palace. His office is in Embassy Golf Links. Most of you know that. They look at the map and say, 800 meters, why are you sending me a cab? I'll walk. And the host will say, don't walk. And then they will hire somebody like me to conduct a curated walk in the city. My expertise is to know where to walk. Because I'm in impression management. Of course, right? So I mean, if you want to show someone your city, you don't want to go where there's the garbage dump, or you think it through. You want to show a best side. And I discovered 20 years back to find 1 kilometer of the city which doesn't have some obvious visible problem is not easy. And we mostly buy our way out by driving around. So a question to you all is, how many of you have a good kilometer outside your place of work or office that you're proud of, that you walk on and will show to somebody else as, please raise your hands if you feel there is 1 kilometer outside your home or office.
Office.
Outside the gate, not inside the gated community, in public space.
Public space.
And the reason I ask is that that means we have, either it's not there or we think it's not there. But as a person who walks, I know so I'm an optimist. And I know where to go because I show people. And so I discover Bangalore has a lot of good things. And my view is very simple. In education, we look for the best students. Everywhere we look for the top movies. Why don't we look for the best civic services? Is been my approach because I needed it for my profession. But I'm also a runner. I don't know how many of you run or cycle for fitness. So I run the city. And I run with people who run marathons and they do 25. We're a small town if you're in the city center. The distance from here to where I live in Indiranagar is 9 kilometers. It's nothing. City center is small. And when you run and walk, you know what is good, what is not good. So I've been involved in civic work for a long time in my personal capacity with government. And I understood from the other side that government is very difficult to deal with. And it is beyond us none of us can change the system. Like we may analyze it, but okay, there is a problem of coordination. What can I do about it? I don't have a locus standi. So as a citizen, we said, we'll not try to change anything. Let's see, we'll take a kilometer, what matters to us. Let's see if we can solve it. And try, and when we fail, figure out who's stopping us. And I discovered to my surprise that nobody stops you. So India is a country where you have a right to litter, right to burn a bus. But you also have a right to fix things. And the only thing that is stopping you is your own bandwidth and your own ability. And so what we discovered when we started going to fix things is that actually nobody stops you because the system is so broken, they don't know, they don't care. They don't even know. No, I'm saying it in jest. So I'll give you an example. And I'm into walking. The biggest obstacle to walking is a missing footpath slab, right? So there's a kilometer of road, 4 slabs are missing, right? That is often the biggest obstacle which nobody can casually solve. You know who in government is in charge of that? Some AMC contractor. There's a contractor in charge of maintenance. Is there anyone out here who doesn't have a broken footpath slab outside their home or office? It doesn't have. Like absolutely continuous footpath without a broken slab. Can anyone claim? No, no, that is the next. But if you have one, we talked about ISRO in one breath, but outside ISRO, the footpaths are broken. Outside ISC. So the mismatch is that we have the knowledge, but somehow, so finally if you figure out who is that person who's accountable for those slabs, that's what I did. And then I'll tell him, sir, can I go to the market and buy a slab and put it myself? I say, if you want to do it, you do it. It's a real answer. So this is a 15-year journey. But we have taken these small irritants, which are called band-aids by a lot of people. And when we start solving them, you realize that if you treat the road like your house, so what it says, don't differentiate private and public. If you treat public space like your space, the problem is in our mind. If that road was mine, if it was my apartment, I would spend money and build a beautiful thing, right? But because it is public money, all of us as users also feel, why should I spend? Tragedy of the commons. But the moment you overcome that leap in your mind, I have found that you treat public space as yours, as my city, Namuru, you mean it. I will spend on it my time and money. And so, because of doing this for a long while, with a large group of us who do these things, nobody stops us, and we're only limited by our bandwidth and our ability to do things. We have not built roads yet. So we are guerrilla we call ourselves positive anarchists. We do anarchy. We do things that are not allowed technically. But the person who's supposed to stop you says, do it. Right? So it's a very funny thing. So there's 2 more points to respond to what I heard. I loved his opening line that the only solution is public transport and walking. Now, we didn't know that. I just walked. I used to show people walking. I ran. And I discovered I could solve problems. And then we said, let's come up with something very hatke, to use a Hindi phrase. So I took a challenge. I said, I will run 100 kilometers on footpaths in Bangalore. Run. 100 kilometers on footpaths. Because we run on footpaths. We identified the tracks. And people said, you're crazy. So me and 3 other people took up a challenge. We ran 7 kilometers every morning for 15 days. And we took the whole thing on video. We had a guy in a car following us. And we said, let's be scientific. It's not an emotion. We'll give you data. So we gave people 100 kilometers of data on footpaths on which we were running. And said, now you decide if the footpath is good or bad. And and you know who liked it the most? The government. Because many senior bureaucrats that we have also walk and run. And so what I've learned is with government, if you emotionally connect to a decision maker on something simple, not scientifically, but emotionally, things work. And so just to end this long story, we had a bureaucrat who is now the chief commissioner of GBA. He walks. When he became commissioner, he said, I want to go for a walk every day, take me. Because I'm supposed expert on footpaths. I took him. When he came, everybody else came along. And then they understand the problems. And then discover there is one junior works engineer who's not doing his job. It's not rocket science. You fix that, you've got the footpaths fixed. So a lot of the work is simple band-aids, maintenance issues, which unfortunately our senior folks have to get involved in. And so we started a movement called Bengaluru. But the good news is, as we speak, South City's budget is being declared. This morning, North City Corporation budget was passed. Yesterday, any of you saw what's happened? The word footpath has been mentioned in all budgets. This is the first time. First time. Okay? Earlier it was an afterthought. And it's serious. I've read the fine print. Okay? East Corporation, which is Mahadevapura, has said we will make 100 kilometers of excellent footpaths. They've actually stated it as a budget intent. They may not do it, but intent is important. To outdo them, Bangalore North has announced 1,000 kilometers of footpaths this morning. 1,000 kilometers. It will come in the press tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm from there.
I mean, it is. And I can share with you that I've been in these pre-budget meetings with all the commissioners, and we have sat and understood the costs of maintenance. And what you said is, new roads you build, new projects you do. The stuff we have, can we just make it walkable? What does it cost? Okay, so I'm just explaining to you that if you approach a lot of these things from a citizen angle, without having fear of failure, and you build trust with the decision makers through whatever emotional means, not scientific means, emotional. In some cases, I found that it is working. So I forgot the exact question that you had asked.
Don't worry about it.
But I was trying to come to that.
No, it's okay. So I guess where we're going with this is now, this is one of the ways in which people can get engaged, and that's very important for all of us sitting here, is while this is not alone sufficient to address the larger institutional challenges which need to be tackled through the various things that have been said. This is also a necessary condition, is in how we feel for the city and how we ourselves get involved, sends a message and a signal to the powers that be to kind of engage, right? And that also helps fast track some of the other things that are happening. I mean, they come and say, oh, we have to build 1,000 kilometers of footpath, how am I supposed to build it? Okay, I'll put these slabs, but then the footpath widths are not there. Then they will reach out for the technical expertise and say, who knows it? Nobody in my office knows it. And that's when DOLT and Professor Verma and Professor Pinjari are sitting down and saying, now you're listening, here's where it is. Let's take it and move. So this nice dance of state, market and society in some way coming together and putting the pressure and doing is I think useful. Some of the inputs that are coming in from what this is happening, how do you see that kind of, you dealt with a lot of data, you're trying to analyze that all the time. How useful is these things, what can you do with it and why is it important? Let's say tomorrow BAF says, okay, you need data, what do you need, how do I use it, what can I give you and how will it come back and inform me, what evidence does it give? How do we answer that to a bunch of people in BAF who might be interested?
Yeah, so I'll talk about one initiative that actually we are doing in collaboration with DULT, Directorate of Urban Transport. We are building this city scale model to be able to estimate and forecast the spatial, temporal, where people travel, from where to where they travel, when they travel, how they travel, by what modes and by what routes. If we are able to sort of forecast that, for different scenarios, for various solutions that are being implemented in the city, then we'll be able to analyze those solutions. For all that, we need a lot of data to represent the city to a reasonably good extent. Thanks to DULT and BMTC, we have data of the public transit supply in the city, the bus schedules, the metro schedules, the capacity of buses, metro, and so on. We have some land use data in the city, broadly, of how much land or how much floor area is there for which type of use, residential floor area, the amount of commercial floor area, right? Based on how land and floor space is being used, we can estimate how much travel will happen to and will happen from, and so on. We also need data on the network, the transport network, right? Oftentimes in many cities, not only in India, outside also, there is good data of transport network for vehicular use, the major roads and so on. The network also includes the footpaths, the non-motorized transport, active modes of transport, infrastructure. That is where we don't have much data. If we incorporate that data into the models, then we'll be able to start answering questions like, what if 1,000 kilometers of non-motorized infrastructure is provided, how that's going to change travel patterns. Then we'll be able to generate evidence on, well, this is how it's going to change this, travel in the city. This is how it's going to improve amount of walking and reduce traffic and so on and so forth. That evidence then can be used by the governments to invest more, so to say. This, the work that's being done that Arun just described, I mean, it's important in its own right, but also the data that comes from it is very important. It's going to be very helpful in some of what the agencies are doing, some of what we are trying to do. Because oftentimes what happens is scientifically all these models are capable of doing a lot, but oftentimes it also is important to know that the models can only do as good as the data that goes into it. If we only represent data of vehicular travel, the models provide answers about vehicular travel. Then we'll end up doing projects only that connect and support vehicular travel.
Yeah.
We need to represent the walking part of the city, the cycling part of the city, so that we can answer questions about walking and cycling, and then take up our projects about this.
Sure. There are some questions here. Before that, I think Professor Verma, one comment from you on the quality of life index, the crowd modeling that was used in Church Street. What is the significance of these kind of scientific models? Just like he said, the data is important to show insights, and you use some data from crowd modeling and some of these things to say, what a nice occasion, IPL is come back. You had proposed certain things during the last time some incidents happened. How do we understand all these things? How do we as normal people try to understand these things?
Yeah, so what we have been trying to do in last some years is trying to build this narrative of sustainable transport beyond just mobility solution or solution for traffic congestion and so on. We have done that enough, and many times it doesn't really cut across really well. You say, okay, walking infrastructure, mode shift will happen, there will be less traffic. It doesn't really go. So what we have really done is to connect and bring it and see it in terms of well-being, in terms of quality of life, and build evidences. So what it means, for example, of having a good quality walking infrastructure on your physical well-being, on your social well-being, on your mental well-being. How much of that we have really quantified and understood, and does it really matter? Because as I said at the beginning also, that the development goal that all of us has is to make quality of life of every citizen in the city better, and that includes all these dimensions. Yeah, you were also talking about elders being caged. It's because of also the absence of infrastructure. Because tomorrow if your elders wants to go out, you'll say, no, don't go out. You'll hurt yourself. We'll do something for you, or we'll take you in the vehicle. And then you see that over time, as people age, they become physically disabled, physically extremely weak, and their decay happens very fast. And which is what you would see, for example, even a German a 70-year-old German, 75-year-old German would go for trekking very regularly.
Yeah.
But at that age, what is the situation of Indians? Yeah? So this is where we are really trying to build better methods, better frameworks to connect public transport use, walking and cycling use to these dimensions of quality of life and well-being, and make people understand that, look, there are larger benefits of it. Can we also, for example, think about or using walking and cycling improvements as a public health measure? Should it not be part of our health action plan? And it is, and it should be. Likewise, should we not treat it as part of our clean air action plan? As per the NGT or whatever, that we are still a non-attainment city. Why are we not able to relate? So what we have been doing, whether it is macroscopic models or microscopic models, using them, we are trying to connect and build evidences to these larger aspects. We have now developed a framework to measure SDG achievement also as part of one of my PhD students' work, which is extremely important because every day in and day out we talk about UN SDGs, but we don't know how to achieve them and how much our interventions from transport will help achieve UN SDGs. Now, talking about the crowd, the fundamental issue in India is that we don't think that crowd management or crowd as such, large crowds, is actually a complex science. We need to treat this subject as a crowd science. Currently, our approach of crowd management is basically that it is the responsibility of the administration, mainly through the use of kinetic force. This is how we are dealing with crowd management, and which is why almost on an average, on a month basis, we jump from one crowd disaster in the country to other. There will be some TV debate for 1 or 2 days maximum about that incident and what happened, and we'll move on and then wait for another crowd disaster to happen. What we have done through our deep research, especially in the context of Kumbh Mela, and generating huge amount of data and understanding more fundamental and scientific understanding of how crowd dynamics happens and what factors, including psychological factors, that lead to situations of crowd risk and crowd disasters. There's also a problem of calling these as stampedes. It's a very wrong term to use and we keep using it. Government immediately uses it and media also picks it up. When you call it as stampede, it basically puts the onus on people that they did something wrong because of which that disaster happened, which is never the case. Even the RCB, the crowd disaster that happened was not a stampede. It was quite in the making because of the actions of the political leaders and the agencies who are supposed to do it and handle it much scientifically. So this is what we are bringing on the table.
Sure.
And I'm now also associated with Nasik Kumbh Mela, which will happen next year, and Ujjain Kumbh Mela in 2028, to see how they can do it better.
Fair enough. So you got about that's useful. So that part of it reminds me again and again that if you ignore science, it will come back and punch you in the face. So it's important to understand that there is science, plans and all these left brain things that we don't like is very important part of getting certain things managed well. You do that in your house, but suddenly we don't feel it is important elsewhere. The questions, there are a lot of them. I was trying to read them, but I was trying to pay attention as well. To DULT, you mentioned various agencies have to submit annual plans for infrastructure development. Is road digging a part of DULT, BMLT? How complex is it to get relevant agencies to collaborate on this road digging? And then there's a question, two questions about pipe natural gas. I don't know, it's a transport issue, but I can try if somebody wants to answer in the end. But this is for sure. How difficult is it? You already told it's difficult, but why? Why don't they want to sit and say, I will do if we commonly agree to something? What inside them says, I don't want to listen to you? Or to all of us? I think tough question, but if you don't want to, somebody else can.
there are systems. I don't know how many of you are aware. We have a system called MARCS, Multi-Agency Road Cutting Software. So any agency in Bangalore which needs to do road cutting in papers has to compulsorily go through apply in marks. So when they apply in marks, we all have logins. All the departments have logins. So the BBMP as a login, the police as a login. So we all have to give our NOCs. And once BBMP receives the NOC of the traffic police and other concerned agencies, then they issue a approval saying this is the timeline in which you are supposed to complete this road cutting. And they have two mechanisms. One is the the agency which cuts the road, they have to fill it up, or they do a certain deposit to BBMP and BBMP fills it. But apparently there are other venues which you can take. You can go to your local MLA, do this, do that. So that is a problem which we face. I cannot talk too much about it, but there are other means. When you give alternate means, people take alternates. So,
Fair enough.
so that's a bit of a challenge that we have to do. I'm very honest, but that is how things work in India. So it has to be, when there is a system, you have to follow the system. See, it's a behavioral issue everywhere. Why a lot of things fail in India, apart from the road cutting, see, BMTC and a lot of our transport agencies have ITS, what we call intelligent transport system, tracking, you can monitor the driver's behavior out there, how much harsh braking they do and all these things, whether they're completing their routes and all. But as of today, last time, when we checked their data, BMTC data, I think 49% of the data were showing that they were all roaming around in the depot.
Yeah.
Because either they removed the GPS and when in Mysore,
Put it in the pocket and walk away.
in Mysore ITS when it happened, we saw that most drivers, they cut the cables before they drive. Now, no system can solve it. What will I do?
We are like this only.
Yeah. So there's a lot of behavioral changes that needs to happen. So I think
Yeah.
this is what we mean by reforms. It cannot just solve through science, very important science technology, but not just by a lot of reforms.
What are our incentives to behave so that our public assets are actually used like that? That seems to be missing, and it's a very human element that I think we need to. That actually brings me to Arun. Beyond emotional connect, which steps which we all have, what are some basic steps one can take for footpaths in our neighborhood, especially if we don't necessarily have the means to replace slabs on our own? They can come and ask you to buy?
Anyway, a slab costs 1,000 rupees just for FYI in the market, which I buy on WhatsApp from my vendor in KR Market. A lot of things are incredibly cheap and we spend more. So, I mean, just to respond to that, a lot of the solutions are very cheap if done privately, very expensive if tendered out. Because anything that you need to do through government is so loaded because of various reasons, whereas a private is, so, I mean, just to give you an example, this morning we were painting a wall, we used best quality Asian paints, blah, blah, blah. It will cost much less than if the contractor had to do it and you would use poor quality work. So, one thing is when you're doing private solutions, you can go for the quality you want. So that's the response. But I wanted to respond to the data discussion because I'm not from the academic field and I asked everybody I met, is there any data on walking? And as he said correctly, if you don't have data, you don't measure it, you don't improve it. There is no data. How many people walked on MG Road today? I have gone and asked everybody. Nobody knows. So it's not difficult. You can sit as the human being and tick off. I have done that. Okay, I have demonstrated that gathering data is not difficult, but someone has to do it and nobody wants to fund it. And so the reason I said I called myself the self-declared mayor of footpaths in Bangalore as a dare. And I said, till anyone takes the job, I'll do it. Because and what I learned was that, very interestingly, I heard today, footpaths are good for climate change, footpaths are good for personal wellness, footpaths are good for the only solution. And it's very intuitive that footpaths are good. But there is no owner of the footpath in discussions at the table. And when I started speaking, I was given chance to speak in conferences, although I'm a total imposter syndrome, I'm not an expert. What I discovered was, by putting my face there, I am the guy for footpaths, people come and talk to you only. Everyone else has lots of issues, and we deal with trade-offs all the time. All planning is trade-offs. And in the trade-offs between cycling and metro and everyone used to dump the unknown leftover stuff on the footpath. There was no lobby for footpaths. And in the last 1 year, what I've learned is if you push for footpaths, everyone says you're doing the right thing. I didn't know it was the right thing till I discovered that from everything, SDGs, it's... So I have gone on stage and said, if there is one silver bullet in mobility, that you just fix the footpaths, a lot of other things will fall into place. Because footpaths capture the inefficiencies of every other department. So I had the occasion to speak at a capacity building workshop of BBMP to 300 engineers. Okay, they gave me a 10-minute slot on footpaths. And after that, many of them came and said, honestly, we used to build roads and all the leftover stuff we used to throw on the footpath, the asphalt. So even within the engineering department, footpath was seen as not important, as opposed to a place for well-being and mobility. So what we decided last year was something, and I'm going to announce it here for the first time.
Excellent.
Okay, as a dramatic statement. Don't tell anyone, but all of you use Google Street View? Every person I have met in academia, Google Street View is the basis from which you draw data and do stuff. Because Google has invested in sending a car around, and is there a Google footpath view? No.
It's on Arun Pai's camera now.
And we are building it, and we'll soon launch it. And I'm launching something called Bangalore Footpath View. Very simple. It is just raw data which everybody else here can use. It does not exist. And so as of now, we have mapped 500 kilometers of footpaths by the simple expedient of walking with a camera. That's it. We have taken video of every inch of 500 kilometers as a public project of 10 of us who like to walk. And I've shown it to people who do data, and this is enough. We can run it on AI engine and can tell you how many bus shelters, how many footpaths, whatever you want. So the lack of primary data is holding up a lot of analysis. I've discovered that. And so this is something each of you can do. We'll come to a point tomorrow when each of you can be a surveyor, and all you have to do is walk 2 or 3 kilometers and give us the raw data, and we'll put it into a repository that anybody can use. So in a way, we are trying to, because I discovered it doesn't exist. So one thing I've learned in data is that if you don't have the data, it doesn't get analyzed, and planning doesn't happen. So, and we have spoken to all the corporation commissioners, and we've offered to them that we will do primary data gathering of all the footpaths and give it to them, and then they can use it. So that is, all of you can, we'll let you know how to take part in that.
Okay. I had a, okay.
Just about the
Sure, please.
There's also an issue of enforcement of the right of way of pedestrians on footpath.
Yeah.
And you should think about it, that who is the enforcing agency responsible to ensure or enforce the right of way of pedestrians on footpath? Nobody. You have traffic police that enforces the right of way of vehicles on carriageway, but we don't have any agency. I discussed this last year with Karthik Reddy also, the traffic commissioner, and it's the same answer that they really don't do. In fact, what he said was the only thing we understand and being forced to take care is to just push vehicles. So pedestrians is not even in their thought process.
Yeah.
And which is why they are the biggest vulnerable road user in terms of road fatalities.
No, the capacity issue is also like every time BBMP tries to put some cycle track or something, it says, sir, why we should not use cobblestone? I said, if it comes off, people will fall down and break their face. They also come and say, what paint to use? Should I use pigmented asphalt, or what color, how should I mix it? So there are technical knowledge is needed for some of them. They come from different places where they have not seen these things. And that's why it's important to provide that through the Center of Excellence, Active Mobility that he's trying to build as well. Yes, please.
As both of them told, see, government, the language government works is acts. Unfortunately, we have to be told to say this is how you are supposed to do things, unless otherwise we don't do. Now, the only act that exists is the Motor Vehicle Act. Okay, there is nothing called as an Active Mobility Act. So, the Motor Vehicle Act is supposed to take care and protect the rights of motorists, what drivers of vehicles, right? So nowhere in any act that exists currently in India which says this is the rights and responsibilities of pedestrians or cyclists.
Yes.
It doesn't exist. So virtually that ecosystem does not exist in the government at all. So that's why it's nobody's baby, as he told. So whatever anybody who wants to put their dump, footpath, because there's no protection. So what we need, the need of the day is an act, an active mobility act. A draft has gone to the government. Hopefully at some time it will get passed. I think all the people here have contributed to it.
How did I even forget to ask that?
So the one other development that has happened is while the broader Active Mobility Act is still in the government's under their consideration, Supreme Court has directed all the states to come up with rules under the Motor Vehicle Act. I had an objection why we should do the pedestrian rules under the Motor Vehicle Act, but unfortunately they have found a word called mobility in the Motor Vehicle Act, and they wanted to stitch in the rights of pedestrians there. So a draft act has been prepared by the Transport Department, and all of us, we have given our inputs to refine that, make it at least little, and hopefully if that act comes, some teeth will be there for the government agencies to enforce and also to provide proper infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah, so
that's a good news.
No, that's very important to note is that Professor Verma is also talking to Ministry of Housing Affairs on the same issue, that DULT was the first agency in the entire country to think about an Active Mobility Act. It was done, they deserve it. Because they went in, read many places across the world, took a look at how Singapore has done it, got the best practices involved, and they, for the first time they have done that. Professor Verma is actually talking to the Ministry of Housing and Affairs and saying exactly the same thing, is that why are you squeezing it under motor vehicles? It's, he told you about how the Motor Vehicles Act is coming, how they look at the roads, everything is coming from a highway engineering standpoint, not from a urban roads. And for us, roads always is only that black thing in the middle. It doesn't include all the street furniture, footpaths, people are never in it. Right? If you want to take away something, that street is of people. Vehicles are just one type of movement. There can be other types. There are people asking, is EV non-motorized? We'll get to that. We have about 5 minutes, but Active Mobility Act is something you all should stand by. There are people in the crowd. I can see the SMN folks here. They are all trying to push for Karnataka government to actually push those acts, all the acts, and go and get stuck in various things. They have done a lot of work on pushing. Actually, BMLT was done, put out there. It's gone in, and it's the rules have not been notified. The act has been passed. Active Mobility Act is lying in the dumps. I don't think they care about any of our mobility. Not these people, but at least at some level they think, we don't have to do all this. So I think we should pay attention to the Active Mobility Act. That was important, and I don't know why I forget. Ria is going to come back and say, how did you forget that?
Just wanted to add, yesterday itself I had a wonderful meeting in Maua, and we have taken up a proposal to develop and draft a National Active Mobility Act. So hopefully we'll work on that and see that just like MV Act, we have rights of active mode users preserved in a National Active Mobility Act.
So not squeeze it under motor vehicles. That is an urgent. Supreme Court said we'll squeeze it wherever we can. But now is the opportunity to say you can have your own dedicated people-specific thing. And it's important to recognize that distinction, and they are sitting there trying to get that done. It's important. There are too many questions, but there is EV charging in government building and public spaces. I know the apartment federations are trying to do. There is an energy piece to it. Maybe if there is an energy seminar you are organizing, you should try that question over there. But from a transportation standpoint, there was another question on EV. Is EV considered what? Sorry, I'm just scrolling here. How does EV fit with sustainable mobility? Who wants to answer? One of you both?
I mean, it does play a partial role, but it's not a solution in itself. So it's basically a solution, and also, of course, if the source of electricity is renewable, then you are at least ensuring that there are no emissions. But traffic congestion remains. If cars are turned into electric, it doesn't matter. So eventually, we have to put towards space efficient modes, which are what you as said, public transport and active modes.
Okay.
That's the only way. And as far as electric vehicle charging is concerned, we have done some work on scientific ways of scaling this up. But currently, I think for public charging infrastructure, BESCOM is responsible to do that. But they don't have a scientific basis of mobility and travel behavior to understand where and how optimally to place the infrastructure, which is where currently they are lacking in terms of how they should scale up. But there are solutions for it.
Just to, I think we are out of time, but one last thing. I think there were a couple of pointers around transportation and mobility engineering is rare professional degree program. Students aspire to produce. Why not create incentivized civil servant roles such as Indian mobility services on the likes of IAS, which is something you talked about. There's another point about that. Why not have something like Indian technical services or scientific services on the likes? So you're talking about it and proposing this, okay?
I had a question to that, Professor, and because he mentioned that there was a severe lack of capacity of sort of urban transport planners, etc. Where does this, I mean, for clarity, where does this capacity come from? I mean, what is the stream for somebody to get into something like this, right? Is there like a well-oiled path of getting to the dulls of the world, etc.? I mean, I don't know.
See, one is what Professor mentioned, having a technical services, but also, because my experience having worked in US, so we had something called as a professional engineers. So after about 4 or 5 years of working in the field, I'm supposed to appear for exams, and about 3 other professional engineers have to recommend that this person is capable of doing transportation services for the city. And that's an accreditation basically. So once I pass through it, I'll be given a certificate that I'm a professional engineer, and for me to retain that professional engineering accreditation, every year I need to show that I have earned about 15 credit hours by taking up certain courses or going through certain workshops, that my knowledge has been updated. So that kind of ecosystem doesn't exist here. So you've seen people who have studied probably 30 years back civil engineering, they'll still be doing what they've learned, but they've probably not looked at what things they need to upgrade to address the challenges that we're facing today. So that is something that we were in conversation with SISTUP also, to see if we can establish that kind of accreditation system at least, so that our engineers are, year on year they're updated, upgraded, and they're certified that they are up to date. At least that is something.
Isn't that an easier first step?
But there's also a core domain expertise, what we call it as transportation engineering and planning. And there are several academic programs across the country in IITs, ISC, we run it, School of Planning and Architecture. There are some IIMs also who are running these kind of specialized master's program and PhD program. So there is a core domain expertise here.
But for a BBMP engineer who is asking, is there a certification program that doesn't have to go like this? You're not hiring transportation planners. Yes. You are making certain people go through an accreditation. It's like, don't come from the Forest Service and start putting roads.
I would say this urban transport service cadre is the path.
But that's the larger thing, right?
So that has to happen at some point of time. In the meantime, yes, you can do these kind of certification and accreditation, but the long term and sustainable real capacity building is basically bringing the service cadre and bring officers with the right background, knowledge and technical know-how.
But at certain levels. What about the engineering?
So that's why I said you can build a central cadre through UPSC and you can build a state cadre through PSC.
But a lot of the local engineers don't go into that KS level or...
That's exactly, currently they are not going.
Okay,
but
so
once
the
you
new
build
one
it,
will, alright, got it.
That's the fundamental.
I think that's a wonderful point to end this discussion on. Thank you very much. Sorry we took a little extra time of yours from the networking. But thank you very much all of you for coming and sharing your thoughts. Thanks BAF and BEST for organizing this. Thank you.
The discussion was very engaging and insightful, making it a truly worthwhile experience. A heartfelt thank you for the distinguished panelists for a thought-provoking session. As a token of our gratitude and appreciation, may I now request representatives from the Bengaluru Science and Technology Cluster and the Bangalore Apartments Federation to kindly come forward and present the mementos to our esteemed panelists. Mr. Satya Sankar. Mr. Arun Pai. Mr. Shamant Kuchangi. Professor Ashish Verma. Mr. Vikram Rai. And Professor Abdul Rauf Pinjri. Yeah, I now invite all our dignitaries and speakers to kindly join us at the front for a group photo. Group photo. Okay. I invite Mr. Rohan Rao, Program Lead, Sustainable Cities and Transport at the World Resource Institute, WRI, India, for a flash talk on open data and mobility as a service applications in Bengaluru.
Hello. Hi everyone, good evening. So whenever we travel to different cities and I speak with my colleagues from also different cities, right? For the longest time, the first point of the small talk that we have always used to be how's the weather, right? How's the weather in Bangalore? Now that's sort of shifted to how much time did it take for you to get to the airport, right? So that's the shift in discussion point. But one thing that always remain and that's remained is how Bengaluru's ecosystem and the citizenry is always very thoughtful and always wants to have conversations about Bengaluru and how we can make it better. And this is very much a representation of it. So thank you very much for everyone for taking your time and being here. Just before I start about open data, and we are in the midst of the madness of cricket, which sort of binds everyone here. So I just want to ask a quick question. What connects Cape Town, Melbourne, Dubai, and London? Think from the lenses of cricket. Melbourne, Cape Town, Dubai, and what did I say? London, yes. Sorry? No. Think through the lens of cricket. Virat Kohli has scored centuries there. So he scored 85, but he scored there. But the focus, why I want to specify about all these four cities is they were also one of the cities which have opened their data, mobility data, for people to come up with new innovative solutions before India. And that's the larger topic of today, right? What's happened is India has moved towards the mobility ecosystem in the city has seen rapid innovations, right? Multiple peoples are doing multiple wonderful things. And there are a lot of experimentations and innovations happening. But however, most of them, if you can go to the first slide, please. But how most of them are very isolated. Everyone's doing multiple things. There are no standards, there are lack of standardization, and one city does not know what the other city is doing, right? Which sort of leads to this kind of digital silos. Everyone is doing different standards, different APIs. No one knows what Mumbai is doing to what Delhi is doing to what Bangalore is doing. This sort of fragmentation leads to multiple different applications where nobody is learning anything. What's happening in Delhi is not happening in Bangalore and so forth, right? So this lack of shared digital infrastructure leads to this kind of poor public governance that we talked about, right? There is limited access, and this leads to there's no unreliable service and there's lack of scaling. So this kind of siloed an isolated pilots leads to preventing these kind of holistic measures. And if you can go to the next slide, and this is the gist of the, oh, thanks. This is the gist of the whole discussion. I think the panelists in the previous discussion also touched upon it, right? Bengaluru sort of caters to more than 50 million daily trips on public transport. More than 45 million trips, 45 lakh trips are made on BMTC buses, and 8 to 10 lakh trips are on BMRCL. But that is still less than what it's capable of, right? Bengaluru has almost 1.3 to 1.4 crore people now. You know how many registered vehicles are there? 1.2 crores, the latest one. Almost one vehicle per person, per capita. While the number of buses that we have is around 6,780, which has remained stagnant in the last 5 to 10 years. Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs says you have to have 60 buses at least for 1 lakh people. On that basis, you should have around 11,500 buses. So there is a lack of 5,000 buses. So there is inherent demand that we can see, right? And of course, the less said about the blue line and the purple line, the better. But there is inherent demand there. And when we speak to people, right, people say, yes, we want to take public transport. But why are we not taking metros? When you do the detailed project reports, the DPRs, and then they have to do what's the expected ridership. Of all the metro systems in India, if you leave aside Delhi, none of the metro systems in this city currently are hitting their actual demand, right? But what is the reason for it? And when we speak to people, they say that two top things come out from the feedback. One, people say there is lack of first and last mile connectivity. I stay 2 or 3 kilometers away, 4 kilometers away. I don't have parking facilities. I don't have opportunities to take my feeder buses, or it doesn't align to my schedule. The other one that we constantly see is lack of information. People say we don't know when the feeder bus comes. We don't know when the next bus comes. We don't know when the airport buses come or when the metro comes. The schedule we don't know. Lack of this kind of real-time information is another barrier for people to take public transportation. So major cities across the world are actually moving towards these kind of open data systems, right? If you can see some of this, the biggest, what if you call prosperous cities, but you also see some of the smaller cities like Accra, Ghana, or Bogota, right? Bogota has a gold standard for BRTS, right? Bus rapid transport systems, right? And then you also have metro systems in Helsinki and Barcelona and New York City. They all have opened up their data. So there is this global standard format called the GTFS. It was developed by Google. It's called the General Transit Feed Specifications, which is the golden sort of global standards, which is used by multiple, you would have seen all of this very big, what are called as mobility as a service applications like Transit, of course, Google Maps. They all have this standardized data sets, which looks at stop locations, what are the bus routes and alignments, what are the schedules, and also fares. The other two components of demand response, transit, and service alerts are very much important for, let's talk about today, right? You have a big match happening, right? So what happens, you'll have more number of people coming into the city. So if you were to have real-time data, then you would know where these kind of demand responses is needed, whether an extra purple line has to be given in 2.5 minutes instead of 5 minutes that's already been scheduled, right? What are the demand responses that are needed? 6 months back when there was heavy downpour where people did not expect, especially in Sarjapur, there were huge news saying that, school buses were stuck in traffic for 1.5 to 2 hours, right? So if they were to have these kind of demand responses, they could police, BTP or BMTC could use the data to deploy more services so people can go. BTP can go to that place and say, at least help in moving the traffic slowly, right? So using these kind of standardized data and open data helps in multiple different areas. So there are basically two kinds of data sets, right? So within GTFS, there's something called static. So you have schedules that have already been prepared. So you already have it. Currently, BMTC also has the Form 5s and the Form 6. They have their schedules. But the most important component that we need to have is real time, right? So when BMTC makes a schedule, right? So they say you start at 6 o'clock at depot in Shantinagar, and then you have to reach Whitefield by 7:45. everyone knows it's physically impossible, right? Because the real traffic that happens, invariably, like, on Mondays, it takes 2.5 hours, probably in Wednesday, it takes 1.5 hours. So those kind of real-time changes have to be incorporated, and that is where the real-time data streams come. So the ITS systems that metro and public transport agencies can have these kind of AVLS and GPS sources, then this provides real-time predictions and also service adjustments that need to be made, because if there is a vehicle breakdown, then BMTC, what they do is, even now, right? So they send another vehicle to sort of alleviate the issues. So those things can be automated with this kind of open data systems. And then this moves on to these kind of big transport providers, and also like, the Googles and the Apples. So the idea is, currently what's happening is all of these are, so BMTC has its ITS and AVLS data, which is proprietary, which is closed. They have the data, they have it in the ITS system, they know. Metro does the same. And then, of course, there are private operators, right? So Uber and the Olas and the Trins and all of them have their own data. They have more data than the public transport, right? So they know. That is why you have this dynamic pricing. There's a lot of demand that's going to happen in Chinnaswamy Stadium at 9 o'clock. It used to be 500 rupees, now it's 150 rupees. So they have all of the data. If they were to put this layer of open data, and then this sort of leads to an integrated mobility app, which sort of helps you to do this multimodal trip planning. So what happens, I am at Nehru Auditorium and I want to go home, my home is in, say, Katriguppe. What do I do, right? So I put my origin and my destination. Using this kind of real-time data, it should tell me, you walk 800 meters to Kaban Park Metro, take the purple line, get down at the green line, and then take a bus or an auto or something. That's the larger idea, right? So it helps you with a single ticketing. Hopefully you can buy one ticket for both the different modes, and also helps if you can provide some sort of rewards. The other part, of course, is, like I mentioned, if there could be some service alerts and so forth. So it sort of provides that. Currently, there are already sort of some applications which have been developed like this. For example, now I know most of the people use Namayatri. Now Namayatri actually provides you to buy metro tickets. But Metro Tickets has this like an open API under ONDC, right? So there have already been certain applications which have been working on it, but the hope is sort of to make it workable, multi sort of operability between different public transport organizations within the city, and of course to different cities. And that is how the NCMC works, right? The National Common Mobility Card is to have like a mobility card which works across different public transport authorities and also across different cities. So if I were to buy a card here, a BMRCL, I should also work in DMRC in Delhi, and then also work with MMRD and Mumbai, and that's a larger idea, right? Unfortunately, currently in Bangalore itself, if I were to buy an NCMC card, it works in Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore Metro, doesn't work on BMTC. Unfortunately, that's how the situation is, but hopefully that will work. But the idea is for the way forward is to have this kind of global parity, right? And one of the pioneers of this have been TfL, the Transport for London. Transport for London, just to give a bit of a background, is in 2010, when London had their Olympics, the whole machinery came together and worked, and one of the big takeaways for them was how to make it easy for people to move across different areas within London, because once archery happens like 15-20 kilometers outside the Olympic stadiums in all the different places, right? And then they understood that the normal way of how it works with millions and millions of tourists coming for the 15 days not going to work. So they invested time and money and opened their data to everyone, right? And then Deloitte did an assessment in 2015. 5 years after the London Olympics, and they found very interesting things. One, more than 5,000, 6,000 developer apps came out just because they opened up the data. There was an induced demand and direct and indirect money that went back into the government in the tune of 150 million pounds, because there was a lot of direct, indirect, and induced demand that happened in the economy, right? And one of the interesting points was, in one of the smaller counties of London Borough, they did an assessment and they found that there was a 17% increase in the bus transport. 17% increase in people using the bus in one of the smaller boroughs. Incidentally, there was like a shooting range there and more number of people wanted to go, but they used buses to get there, because you have people around the world coming who don't want to take the black cabs and all of those things. Right? They're literally backpacking through Europe. They wanted to take this public transport, and there was an induced sort of demand to take this kind of public transport. So there have been global examples of open data inducing this kind of demand, both in terms of finance and also demand for people to use public transport. And that's one of the ways that Bengaluru also can do. New York, of course, is one of the oldest. It's a 150, 200-year-old network. And of course, the talk invariably comes to how can we use AI, right? AI, you could have the best of models, but if you don't have good data, how will you get a great output out of it? So data, data, data. And then last, I would say, what is the future, right? I was just thinking about it the other day. Whenever you book a ticket on any of those air ticket, on any of the portals, right? It says, do you want to add a cab to this to go to your destination? Do you want to add a hotel room to this? Why doesn't it say, can I add Airavata bus ticket to this, right? So the Airavata bus tickets are great. Buses are great, right? It's clean, it's air conditioned, it's predominantly fast compared to, and that's of course cheaper than any of these things. So imagine if you could do this, right? When I'm coming out of my carousel, and I'm waiting 5 to 10 minutes to get my bag. If there were big information systems, when the next flight is going and all of those things, if you could have at bus bay 3, KA14 or KA9 is now leaving in 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Now I can book the ticket on a mobility service application. And then because it's real time now, and now it says that if I were to leave KAL at 5 o'clock, and then because real time it looks at what's the current condition of traffic, it tells me by probably 6:45 I will be at Meenakshi Mall, right? Using this open data, what could happen is the ETA is provided to an auto rickshaw 5 or 10 minutes before, and it's auto assigned. You pay once when you get onto the bus, a QR code is generated, you get down, an auto rickshaw is waiting, you scan it and then go home. That's the greatest sort of way that you can utilize public transport. Because what stops people, it's the friction. You buy a bus ticket or get to the metro, go stand in 5 minutes to get a ticket, and then wait for the metro to come and all of these things. If access to information is given, right, if people know, I'm here at 5 o'clock, 5:15, I know my bus or metro is coming, so people can take their time, grab their coffee, take that breath for 5 minutes, and then be aware to take public transport. So the best way is, one, access to information and make the transport as frictionless as possible. So that's the larger idea. So I thank you, everyone. This was my flash talk. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I invite Ms. Reshma PS, co-founder and MD of Street Matrix, who will speak about Street Matrix work on improving safety and walkability, and share a few practical ideas that can be explored for residential streets.
Very good evening, everyone. I'm Reshma, co-founder of Street Matrix. Before I start the talk, let me just, appreciate the panel talk which had happened. Very insightful panel talk. I think this is one thing will happen when we have the right speakers, professors, mentors, active partners. Everybody comes to the forum and talk things straight. So what is right, what is wrong, how to be corrected, from straight point of view. So I think it actually helped me also to, kind of nudge to my talk, because one thing which has been emphasized over a period of time during the entire panel talk was active mobility, walking, good footpath, and we have also heard from Mr. Arun also the kind of an efforts which they are doing on field. So the Street Matrix is actually working on a ground level action plans, implementable action plans. So let me take the narrative from Arun itself. Like, if you want to think about some good memories in the space of, mobility, we always think about the places we visited, their transport system, networks, their good footpath, that is even the environment which made us very comfortable and safe, which is very important at this point of time. These are something we will have. But he asked the question like, do you have a walkable environment or even walkable infrastructure around you, your office, your house? Many of us said it is not even there in place, right? So that is where even we started looking at, why can't we start correcting it through the kind of an capacity which we can do it? So that is how Street Matrix has been born. It's not moving. So it's not control. That's fine. So what we try to do is that, can you please go back? Yeah. So what we try to do is that the kind of a procedure which everyone was telling, like understand the issue, collect the data, understand and narrate your data, document the issues and look for the possible actions and then come to the actionable plans. This is what exactly our core approach also. So we believe in data-driven approaches, and the core services which you are looking is mobility, the road safety, urban design, as well as the climate action solutions. So it's a 4-year journey of my entrepreneurship, and we have now come into, kind of set of selected engagements. Since the time is short, I just thought of pulling some of the core initiatives which we have done in the city of Bengaluru as well as in Tamil Nadu region too. So one is like the pedestrian focused street design, Chickpeta revitalization, safe route to school, which was one of the city's first of its study of having a 4-kilometer stretch of having a very safe corridor for people to walk, not only for people, even elders, caregivers, everyone to walk. And we do have now engagements with the GBA across all the corporations, involving us into their, street design, junction improvements, making it as a safe junction as part of now Suraksha 75 is going around the city. So we've been consultants for many of the junction designs too. And in the core issue, which is like the parking, we have the parking policy which is been approved, and many of the action plans have been made into for the implementation, but there was some lag. But I guess there is some momentum is coming back, and now corporations are thinking, even from their viewpoint is, though from revenue perspective, we were still trying to position ourselves as into the mobility space and trying to nudge this subject of smart street parking. And we had this organization engagement with the Kumta, where we have done for a neighborhood level action plan. We were also involved into the parking policy as well as to the parking action plan for the neighborhood level. So this is one of an interesting piece of work where whoever knows Chennai profile, Annanagar is one of the core commercial area as well as one of the beautiful layout with lot of residentials too. So we have studied this issue of parking, like how it is been affecting the residents and other things. And even lot of, we had this RWS meetings, feedbacks, where they were even suggesting, don't put parking on my street, try to come out with some of the arrangements. So that's how the residential permits and other things which we have drafted and submitted. Now that is been going for implementation stage. And we had another program which is devised for city of Coimbatore, where it all started with just one phone call. Like, can you tell me the radius of the roundabout which I should make it? So the question was like, does it even support a roundabout? Does your geometry requires a roundabout? And that's where our program slowly started. And we could see, they send us a drawing saying like the statue, that is for them beautification is the major thing. So they said, I want to put my statue, you just suggest me like the radius. We said like, this is a junction, and that's where, it has to be predictable for people who are coming or people who are traveling over there. That's where the conflict arises. It has to be a safe place. So that's our program started, and slowly and steadily we were able to kind of position us and tell the engineers and even the system administrators over there, like, see, you are doing it a wrong way. You need to fix your junctions well and safe. And that's how the program of Kovai Junction Transformation Program started. And today we have almost 41 junctions have been designed for the city, and at the phase 1 there are 10 junctions improved, and there have been getting a lot of appreciation, because that's the first time a word of pedestrian refuge island has been heard in the city. So you can even imagine like how even a city like Coimbatore, which has been hearing for the first time pedestrian safety, pedestrian cross, everything is important in a junction, can think about where we are standing in terms of active mobility part. The other thing is that we are also connected with RWS in terms of the local implementable actions in space of climate actions too. Yeah. So there is lot of understanding, and even Professor Ashish Verma's comment on like The space is not just for walking, it connects to your health, the quality of life, mental well-being, everything. That's one where our impact assessment study on an infrastructure we started with. We asked ourselves a question. Everybody is talking about we need infrastructure, but where are the evidences? When infrastructure is done right, how does it help? So that is where this documentation has started. So the one you can see the image of, this is the report we published it, which was under the smart city, implementation. So there is a good walk. It is a neighborhood transformation. There was a walkway of 2.5 meter, 3 meter. It was with it was with a lot of tree canopy and other things, but there was nothing else to add to the charm. And they created that design into a people-centric approach with a lot of, play area for the kids, resting places and other things. So add it more vibrant. When they did so, what has happened? That is what we did it. In fact, city was saying like, okay, you're doing it, do it for a longer run. So we said, let us take it for a 3-year evidence. And the 3-year evidence documented that the city, which had hardly like 3,000, 4,000 people were coming into the street just for walking, because it has a good walkway, there was no restriction and other things, they were enjoying. But after doing the implementation, we could see that the number has rise to 12,000. 12,000 every day visiting. And in that, 30% of them were women. Women find it as very safe, because there is like the design itself is promoting in that way. And there was a lot of cross-sectional studies we did, like what time they are spending, how much time they are spending, how it is able to help their physical activity as well as mental well-being. So everything was on a positive note. I'll be happy to share the report if anyone wants to have a look at it. So all I want to say is that, if we are doing things right, gradually infrastructure is going in the right way, and that we will have more impact on the quality of our life too. Now, in this gradual process of doing things, we also have come across with certain opportunities, a lot of challenges, and even understanding this as a problem statement, and was also thinking like it is time to try, test it, pilot it, small scalable things, not at the larger level. We don't have to expect every time like GBA takes a call, they let them put out for a tender for a street. No, there is something we can also try out. These are something I just wanted to put it together and present it to the audience here. So let it be in Chennai, let it be in Coimbatore, let it be in Bangalore, the scenario is quite same. In fact, the first picture is from Kormangala. We had the very recent site visit, so we could see, can you make out there is a school there, and this is a model road and there is a first crossroad going in that, and all these people are waiting for the school, for the to pick up the kids from there. And you can see like around it, these are like on street parking, either can be spillover from the commercial or from the neighborhood itself, but they don't have a safe, no one even knows this is a school. First of all, there is no awareness, there is no intimation that it's a school zone, and you can see the chaotic situation, right? Is this something like you are expecting? Do we really have to expect from the stakeholders to come and correct it? Or can we do some sort of a pilot? So similarly, all the other cases, you can see it, how things have been. So we have identified certain kind of collated into the issue statements, like how do we improve the walkability, especially on the safety of school access? How do we prioritize our streets? And also like end of the day, like, how the climate aspects, like the shade, seating, waiting areas, all these are also to be part of it. So we are just proposing few of these thoughts, like the concept of slow street, the concept of like safe route school, can we think about the parking management on the residential streets, and how do we create the public spacing and greening? So I'm going to show you a couple of examples. Yes, this I have taken from the DALT itself. So there was a concept, first pilot has been implemented, Alexandria Street. That's very thoughtful, the residential streets, or when you go to the lower hierarchy of the streets, it is not meant for the motorist to go. It is like you need to have a calm, it is speed calming, all those things has to be taken care. But with nowadays what we see is the other way. So what we can do as an intervention for the resident to experience their street as something different. It is safe, it is calm, right? So these are something like a pilots. One can try it and see like through markings, and so through some of the design intervention, can we make it as a slow streets? The other one is like, since we are largely working on the school access program, I just wanted to highlight this. So one, you can see that this is one, I said, like, it's a 4-kilometer stretch. The proper design intervention, how it has to be, a complete street approach of redesigning it. But it requires a massive funding from the stakeholders side. But if not, what else? So these are some of the projects where we were also involved, where such process have started when the residents itself came out and told, like, there are schools, we are seeing like people walking, there are a lot of conflicts happening. Why can't you do out something, if not into this scale of it? So that's where tactical urbanism and other things are coming. So you can, the above one is purely like, through paintings, markings, and, transverse bar marking, you can see that. The below one is through a visual image of your tactical, you are just giving information to the riders, motorists, like go slow, this is a school zone, you are entering to a school zone. So these are something like even at a small pilot scale, one can try it out. The most important part is the parking, which is like everyone's issue, right? So how do we address this? So we do have provisions in the parking policy, which also encourages for residential permits. So here I am showing you, like, as I said, for Kumta, for Chennai, we have worked out, even in this discussion, I clearly remember like residents coming out and saying, like, they were very clear, we want our streets to be walkable, not like someone else is coming and parking, because the neighborhood was like, more or less in the transition stage of their land use, like most are getting into the commercial, so all these impact of spillover was coming to them. So even Kumta is an agency, something similar to BMLTA was been saying, and it is in quite a lot of momentum, has been doing many projects. So they were eager to test and try it out how to do this residential permit. So they were asking us, like, find out the secondary streets where the spillover is happening. How can we, through design, tackle it and then bring to an operation, find out a mechanism for it. So this is something we have tried it for and, drafted and documented for Kumta to test it, try. Yeah, so that is from my end. So the point I wanted to, conclude is that many of the, like there's an example from Mr. Arun itself, the small change is a meaningful change. So at the end of the day, whatever the problems at the community level, at the residential neighborhood level, if we can address it, yes, that would be the first step to do it. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Baf, and thank you, Best. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Before we disperse, we are delighted to share that the next episode of this public lecture series will be held on April 25th, where we discuss about sustainable energy, a key to powering our future while reducing environmental impact and ensuring long-term resilience. Please do take a few moments to visit the stalls in the ground floor where you can witness a few sustainable mobility initiatives in action. We also invite you to stay back for networking tea, because often the most meaningful ideas and collaborations begin with informal conversations. Thank you all once again for being such an engaged and thoughtful audience. We look forward to seeing you at the next episode.